What happened to the cartels? Oh, here they are. Got them. All right. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jana Balaba Girivardhavati Gopi Jana Balaba Girivardhavati Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjaguna Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatera Vanachari Yamana Tera Banachare Jaya Radho Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radho Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivardhavati Gopi Jana Balaba Girivardhavati Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatera Vanachari Yamunatera Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravatikacharya also Teta Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Sayam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Machuranam Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Kajai, Yamunamai Kajai, Srimati Lasi Devi Kajai, Samveda Bhakta, Vrinda Kajai, Gaur Premananda, Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Budale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Deja Tarni. So we're reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto, 5th Chapter, Text 48. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Iti tat chintiha kinchin mlana shiham ado mukam shandamarkav oshanasav vivikta iti hochatahu. Iti tatchinteha kinchin Mlana Shriyam Adomukam Shandamarkavav Shadasau Vivikta iti hochatahu. Iti tatchinteha kinchin Lana Shriyam Adomukam Sandamarkavaso Shanasau Vivikta iti hochatahu. Iti tachinteha kinchin Lana Shriyam Adomukam Shandamarkavav Shanasau Vivikta iti hochatahu. Okay.
Iti tatchintaya kinchin Manasriyam adhomukam Chandamarka oshanaso Vikta iti hochatu.
Iti tachinteha kinchin Lana Shriyam adhomukam Shandamarkavav Shanaso Vivikta iti hochatahu.
Ladies. Shandamarkavav Shanasau Vivikta iti hochatahu. All right. Okay. Iti thus tachintiya with full anxiety because of Prahlad Maharaj's position. Kinchet somewhat. Mlana, lost. Shriyam, bodily luster. Adamukam, his face downward. Shanda Amarka, a Shanda and a Marka. Oshanal Sao, sons of Shukracharya. Vivikte, in a secret place. Iti, thus. Ha, indeed. Uchatuhu, spoke. So translation. Thinking in this way, the king of the Daityas, morose and bereft of bodily luster, remained silent with his face downward. Then Sanda and Amarka, the two sons of Shukracharya, spoke to him in secret. So you can repeat. Thinking in this way, the king of the Daityas, morose and bereft of bodily luster, remained silent with his face downward. Then Sanda and Amarka, the two sons of Shukracharya, spoke to him in secret. So there's no purport to this, so we're going to read the next text until we get to purport. Ajitam tvaya kena jagatrayam bruvor vijrimbana tashta samasta dishnyapam natasya chintyam tavanata chakshvahe navai shishunam gunadoshayo padam. Translation is, O Lord, we know that when you simply move your eyebrows, all the commanders of the various planets are most afraid. Without the help of any assistant, you have conquered all the three worlds. Therefore, we do not find any reason for you to be morose and full of anxiety. As for Prahlad, he is nothing but a child and cannot be the cause of anxiety. After all, his bad and good qualities have no value. So there's no purport here. And the next text, let's see. No, there's no purport in the next text, so we'll just read the next text. Imam tu pashar varunasya badva nidehi vito napalayate yata murischa pumso vyavasharya sevaya yavad gurur vargava agamishati. Until the return of our spiritual master, Shukracharya, arrest this child with the ropes of Varuna so that he will not flee in fear. In any case, by the time he is somewhat grown up and has assimilated our instructions or served our spiritual master, he will change in his intelligence. Thus there is need be no cause for anxiety. And finally, text 51. Tateti guru paroktam anugyayedam abravet dharma yasyo padeshtavyo rugyam yo griha medinam. So, after hearing these instructions of Shanda and Amarka, the son of his spiritual master Hiranyakashipu agreed and requested them to instruct Prahlad in that system of occupational duty which is followed by royal household families. So, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hiranyakashipu wanted Prahlad Maharaj to be trained as a diplomatic king in ruling the kingdom, but the kingdom, the country, or the world, but not to be advised about renunciation or the renounced order of life. The word dharma here does not refer to some religious faith. As clearly stated, dharma yasho padeshtavyo gukyam yo griha medinam. There are two kinds of royal families, one whose members are simply attached to householder life, and the other consisting of Rajarshis, kings who govern with ruling power but are as good as great saints. Prahlad Maharaj wanted to become a Rajarshi, whereas Hiranyakashipu wanted him to become a king attached to sense enjoyment, Griha Medinam. Therefore, In the Aryan system, there is Varnashram Dharma, by which everyone should be educated according to his position in society's division of Varna: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, and Ashrama: Brahmacharya, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. A devotee purified by devotional service is always in the transcendental position above the mundane qualities. Thus, the difference between Prahlad Maharaj and Hiranyakashipu was that Hiranyakashipu wanted to keep Prahlad Maharaj in mundane attachment, whereas Prahlad was above the modes of material nature. As long as one is under the control of material nature, his occupational duty is different from that of a person not under such control. One's real dharma or occupational duty is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam, as Bhagavatam 6:3-19. As described to his order carriers by Dharmaraj or Yamaraj, a living being is a spiritual identity, and therefore his occupational duty is also spiritual. The real dharma is that which is advised in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvadhamram Prityaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja, Bhagavad Gita 18:66. One must give up one's material occupational duties, just as one must give up his material body. Whatever one's occupational duty, even according to the Varnashram system, one must give it up and engage in one's spiritual function. One's real dharma or occupational duty is explained by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jivara Swarupa, Haya Krishna, Jivara Swarupa, anyway, Haya Krishnara Nityadasa, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 2108. Every living being is an eternal servant of Krishna. That is one's real occupational duty. So, Om Gana Timiranda Shah Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshura Niditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I think that reading Prabhupada's purport, one may misunderstand what one's duty is. One may think that we should not learn about politics, because Prahlad Maharaj, in one sense, rejected one aspect of politics, which is what? Friends and enemies. Because Prahlad Maharaj, being on the platform of a pure devotee of the Lord, was, or is described, his mentality is described by the words Ajata Shatrava. That means he whose enemy is never born. And of course, Yudhisthira Maharaj also was of that same quality. He is called Ajata Shatru. Of course, that caused some problems in the Battle of Kurukshetra. However, one may misunderstand the thing and think, to become a devotee means to give up varnashram in all aspects and to give up politics. So I'm going to describe why politics are necessary and varnashram is necessary. One may even hear about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's discussions with Ramananda Roy, this Ramananda Samvada, and where Ramananda Roy is asked by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because in this case, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is taking the position of a student, and Ramananda Roy is taking the position of a teacher, and he's asked by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what's the goal of life and what's the method of achieving that goal? And Ramananda Roy first replies, Varnashram. And then we have Lord Chaitanya do what? He rejects Varnashram completely. He said, no, I reject this. And so you hear about these things and you're often inclined to think, well, that means, just like, the hell with occupational duty, the hell with politics, I'm just going to love everybody. Of course, it's not a bad idea to love everybody. So we find in the lives of great Vaishnavas that they do use politics. I mean, for example, in the case of Ramananda Roy, who is Vishaka in Krishna's pastimes, he used politics to try to get Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to give his darshan to King Prataparudra. What is politics? And politics means sometimes doing things indirectly. Of course, in the Bhagavatam, and according to Chanakya Pandit, politics means using different methods to deal with people who may be enemies or potential enemies or people you want to convince. And he gives this whole hierarchy. He says, first of all, when you're trying to convince someone to do something or you're dealing with an enemy, first thing you do is sweet words. You say, my dear Prabhu, you're such a nice devotee. You cook so nicely, you dress the deity so nicely, whatever. And then you say, would you be willing to do arti every day this week? So, just like management means that sometimes you got to not manipulate people, but you have to understand psychology. And so you may say that's political. That's management. Management means you have to be political to a certain extent. So, but especially when you're dealing with an enemy, one of the things you want to do is like sweet words. And then Chanakya Pandit describes the next strategy is either bribery, you offer him something. Would you be willing to do this service for Krishna if we give you 500 euros a week? I'm not suggesting that we do this as managers, but sometimes you have to just like face reality, isn't it? If someone says, I have a family to maintain, or I'd like to go to India every month, or something like that, then you have to, say, well, let's work out a deal. And isn't it the practical management stuff? Even as devotees. If you're managing, like if you're a temple president of GBC, like right now, we're dealing, of course I shouldn't talk about all the controversies in ISKCON during class, but we're dealing with certain controversies between different geographical areas in ISKCON. And obviously the geographical areas, the West and India. Anyway, so we're dealing with certain controversies. So first of all, we have to employ my dear godbrother Brahmatirtha. Everybody here knows Brahmatirtha? No.
Yeah.
He's an expert mediator. And so we're trying to mediate and trying to come to a conclusion, a win-win situation. That's all politics too. Politics is not bad. This is the point I'm making. It's used in Krishna's service. Krishna also used politics quite a bit. Wasn't it political when Krishna told Duryodhana you should cover your midriff, your midsection of your body, because you shouldn't be naked in front of your mother? I think you all know that story. And because he was tricking, that was a political jai. That was a political scheme, wasn't it? And when Krishna tried to make peace with the Pandavas, with the Kurus, and then eventually they tried to capture him, and then Krishna had to show his universal form. So that's all the different stages of politics. We're talking about these stages like, sweet words, bribery, high position, and then you have threats, and then eventually what Prabhupada called argumentum ad vacuum, which means the stick. So devotees have to use these things when they're serving Krishna. Obviously, if you're a Babaji, any Babajis here? No? Or Mamajis or Babajis? Female Babajis. If you're a Babaji, you don't have to do those things. I remember Prabhupada's godbrother, Krishnadas Babaji, we would ask him, it was very interesting, we would ask him about different things in this world, management, and he would just simply laugh at us and chant. I don't think any of you met him, but we go, Maharaj, what do you think about this? And he'd go, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. He was the only Babaji disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And he was very blissful. And oftentimes I wish I could be so blissful like that. Not having to deal with all these things. Just any position. Serving Krishna in the material world. Yukta Vairagya. Using things for Krishna's service. We have to deal with money, we have to deal with people, we have to deal with so many different things, and at the same time remain, of course, detached. Actually, we have to have sort of like two frames of consciousness simultaneously. In one sense, we have to have this political frame of consciousness, and at the same time, we have to this Vaishnava frame of consciousness. It's hard. You have to balance the two, and we're going to talk about that in a second, as insofar as how ISKCON, my belief that ISKCON needs to organize itself, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. So we find Balaram engaged in politics. When Samba kidnapped Lakshmana, who was Duryodhana's daughter. Does everybody know that story from the Krishna book? And then Balaram, and then the Kurus, they captured Samba. This is a Krishna book story. The Kurus captured Samba, and Balaram came to, sweet words. He comes and tries to speak some sweet words. And then what happens is the Kurus, they insult Balaram. And then Balaram has to resort to the ultimate strategy in politics, which is, I mentioned before, argumentum ad vaculum. So what does he do? He takes his plow and he drags the city of Hastinapur into the Yamuna River. And then they give up. Okay, we were just kidding. We really enjoyed it and we wanted to see, they say we really wanted to see your power, Balaram. So that's also sweet words. They were using sweet words to pacify Balaram. And then they produced Samba and Lakshmana, and there was a wonderful marriage after that particular point. You can think of so many instances, in the Battle of Kurukshetra, Krishna's activities, where politics was employed. So we don't reject these things, but we do them for Krishna. That's the first point. Now, actually, the more difficult point to address here is something that devotees keep discussing and arguing about, which is varnashram, right? How to institute varnashram in ISKCON. Or should we just renounce varnashram? And I think there's a happy medium between the two. Renouncing varnashram is not something that even Krishna suggested to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. Because Arjuna was a Kshatriya, right? And Arjuna wanted to renounce varnashram, didn't he? Why? Because his duty was just too difficult. And according to Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, if one renounces his duty because of difficulty, then that's renunciation in the mode of passion. We all have certain duties. Myself, I have duties in the Krishna conscious movement, and some of them are very difficult, and many times I'm thinking, I'd like to go to Govardhan, just sit down and become a Babaji. And no problems, and be like Krishnadas Babaji and just chant Hare Krishna every time someone asks me a question. Which would be pretty blissful, isn't it? The Govardhan ki jai, Haribol, Haribol. What about this controversy in ISKCON? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Gauranga. That would be pretty blissful. So that's renunciation in the mode of passion. It's not renunciation in the mode of goodness. So Arjuna, he wanted to renounce. And Krishna said, no, by your nature, what? You're going to be forced to act anyway. And there is an instance of that too in the Mahabharata, interesting Mahabharata story, where Arjuna was engaged in austerities. One of the purpose of the austerities was to get weapons from Lord Shiva, the Trishura, the trident from Lord Shiva, and also gain entrance into the heavenly planets. So he wanted to gain entrance so he can get weapons from Indra. So he was performing austerities and chanting, I guess he was chanting Om Namo Shivaya, 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 Shivaya Namaha. So even a Vaishnava is engaged in worshiping Lord Shiva. Sometimes you hear people say, don't worship the demigods or anything like that, but the gopis also worshipped Katyayani to get Krishna as their husband. And so Arjuna was worshipping Lord Shiva to be able to serve Krishna. Now, I'm not saying that we need to do that, but it's another instance of yukta vairagya, not renouncing things in this world. So and he also served the other demigods later on. But anyway, so he's worshiping Lord Shiva, chanting Om Namo Shivaya, and along comes this boar. A boar means a big pig. I don't know if you have them here.
Yes.
You have them here?
Not right now, but we have.
Yeah, in one of our communities, devotees have actually had to kill boars, even though you're not supposed to kill animals, because the boars were actually threatening the people that were big, like as big as cows, basically. And they were threatening people and killing cows and destroying the agriculture. So there's this big boar. And the boar is getting ready with the tusks, getting ready to attack Arjuna. And Arjuna naturally pulls out his arrow, defends himself. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, even a Brahmin can sometimes defend himself when he's being attacked. That doesn't mean that someone's a Kshatriya. So he pulls out his arrow, fires the arrow. Same time, another arrow hits the boar simultaneously. And Arjuna sees this other arrow, and then he sees this kirata, that means jungle man, aborigine, jungle man, whatever you may call it. He sees this kirata who's also fired the arrow, and Arjuna says, my arrow killed the boar. And the kirata says, my arrow killed the boar. And so they're going back and forth like that. And Arjuna says, well, put up your, as we say in America, put up your dukes. Let's fight. So they start fighting each other. Arjuna's fighting. When he was supposed to be meditating and peaceful and chanting Om Namo Shivaya. But his real nature has come out. That's the point I'm making. He wasn't able to keep his real nature down. And Krishna says, what good will repression accomplish? Everyone is forced to act according to their own nature. So his real nature comes out, and he's fighting. Of course, there's a happy ending to this, because Lord Shiva defeats him. Arjuna gets very worried as to who this Kirata is. He begins to worship Lord Shiva and offer garland to Lord Shiva, and he sees the garland, the same garland he's offering to the Shiva Linga, is now on the neck of this Kirata, and he understands the Kirata is Lord Shiva. And then he begins to worship Lord Shiva, and he gets the Trishura, the trident. Lord Shiva is very pleased with his chivalrous activities, and so it has a happy ending. But the point I'm making, the reason I'm telling that story, is to illustrate the point that even if you have a pure devotee, and Arjuna is a pure devotee. Krishna in the Gita says that when he instructed the Vivaswan, the sun god, in the science of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna was present. And Prabhupada explains that whenever Krishna appears, Arjuna is there. You have the Nara and Narayan rishis. Nara is Arjuna. Narayana, of course, is Krishna. So here's an eternal associate of the Lord, not just the pure devotee, but an eternal associate of the Lord. And he's functioning according to his psychophysical nature. He hasn't gotten out of Varnashram. It's very interesting. Krishna nowhere tells Arjuna to do something different than his nature in the Bhagavad Gita. His whole, like Prabhupada quoted this verse, what Sarvadhamam Parichasha Mamikam Sharanam Prajaham Tvam Sabapapebhyo Mokshiyashami Masuchaha, that give up all varieties of religiosity, and just surrender unto me and do accordingly. Don't worry, do not fear, I will free you from all the sinful reactions. So that doesn't mean that you give up your psychophysical nature. You use your psychophysical nature in serving Krishna. So it's oftentimes misunderstood by devotees that, you just surrender. And yes, temporarily you could surrender. In emergency situations, we do the needful. If there was a fire in the building, then I would help put out the fire, but I'm not going to become a fireman. Isn't it? Like if you had fire, I would be part of the fire brigade. But that's an emergency situation. Emergency situation, we can do so many things. So that's a really important aspect of varnashram, to understand one's psychophysical nature and engage it in Krishna's service. And oftentimes the devotees say, how can you understand your psychophysical nature? It's actually quite easy. It's like what you gravitate towards, what you can do for 8, 9, 10 hours a day and be blissful doing it. Sometimes you have to do other things. Like, for example, my psychophysical nature is more like Brahminical, philosophical. And so I can do other things. I know how to fix a car. I know how to manage. But then, sometimes I'm on a GBC meeting and all this, like, bureaucracy is coming out. And I'm thinking, get me out of here, But I do it. But not all day long. If I did it all, I wouldn't be able to do it all day long. So it's a question of what you can do for many, many hours a day and engage accordingly. In addition, Prabhupada said, it's the duty of the spiritual master to engage the disciple according to their psychophysical nature. So, in other words, and that means Varna and Ashram. And Prabhupada in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and there's the story of Gajendra Mokshana, where Prabhupada specifically makes that point. That one, as far as the ashram is concerned, where you have Gajendra the elephant, who is being defeated by the crocodile in the water. And when he's being defeated by the crocodile in the water, he's losing. That's what I mean by being defeated. So he's being defeated, and Prabhupada comments, of course Krishna comes to save, but Prabhupada comments that one should fight Maya from one's basically natural position. In other words, it's natural for people to be a grahasta, and they can be stable and steady year after year in serving Krishna in that ashram. They can make much more progress than a sannyasi who is unstable. So in other words, one has to identify, in a wider context, one has to identify one's needs. That's really what varnashram means. To identify what your particular needs are in terms of, you're married, or you're brahmachari, or you're sannyasi, or vanaprastha, whatever vanaprastha means nowadays. Nobody's figured that one out yet. Wearing tree bark and going to the forest. Just figuring it whether it fulfills your particular needs. Like, of course, I've talked a lot about need-based psychology, but Bhaktivinoda, this is not simply my invention or an invention of modern psychologists. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his Chaitanya Shikshamrita, makes this point very, very clearly about how each and every one of us has different needs, and those needs need to be fulfilled, even what we would consider to be lower needs. Of course, that's a pejorative, that's critical. We shouldn't think, it's a lower need to be able to breathe. And to become Krishna conscious, I have to give up breathing, or give up eating nice prasadam. Like, sometimes we hear about the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, how they would take 1 pat of butter every 2 days. And I remember in the early days, I heard about that, early days when I first joined the movement, I heard about that, and I thought, I never want to become very advanced in Krishna consciousness. If that's what it means, to eat 1 pat of butter every 2 days. and Prabhupada jokingly said when they tried to feed him simpler prasadam, he said, basically it's better to die than eating something that's tasteless. But Prabhupada was in the same level of renunciation as the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. So it's not that we want to speak negatively about the lower needs. We have a need, we basically have needs for recreation, we have needs for loving relationships. And why does Rupa Goswami talk about dadati prajigranatu guyam akyati prichati bhungte bhojyate chada, right? in the Upadeshamrita. How our movement increases, which Prabhupada states in the purport, by the loving exchanges between the Vaishnavas. So we have that need. It's not, you could talk on a hierarchical basis, it's a lower need, but I don't like to use that word. It's a basic need to be Krishna conscious. It can be engaged in Krishna's service. Like Prasadam, we're engaging our needs in Krishna's service, right? Not thinking, oh, I simply need to sleep because it's Maya, but I need to do it anyway. But I'm sleeping to get it. You put it in a positive frame, a positive outlook. That I'm sleeping to get me, so I'll get energy and strength of mind and clarity of thought, so I can serve Krishna nicely. Or, if someone is getting married because they have a need for that sort of relationship. I'm married because I'm given that facility to raise Krishna conscious children, isn't it? And you make it real positive, not just, oh, I have these basic needs. I have to breathe. I wish I could give up breathing. I wish I was like Dhruva Maharaj, who gave up breathing, or Hiranyakashipu. Yeah, he gave up breathing. I mean, there's flame coming from his head. But, we should put things in a positive context, these basic needs. And that's what Varnashram means. Varnashram basically means the whole society is focused on spiritual advancement, and people have different basic needs that will help them become steady year after year, not like that rabbit and the tortoise and the hare story. Hare means rabbit. That just is like a flaming meteor that just is really bright, distributes millions of books for 5 years, and then boom, he's extinguished. So one has to be rightly situated. That's Varnashram. On the other hand, you may find people talking about Varnashram saying that we have to designate Vaishnavas. Of course, the ashram should definitely be designated, whether someone is a brahmachari, grasta, bandhava, you don't want to see a sannyasi walking around with his girlfriend. That would be a disaster. But anyways, of course, I've probably seen everything in ISKCON since I joined. I mean, I've had so many experiences that I couldn't imagine beforehand I would have had those experiences before I joined the movement. But, we don't need to just see people in terms of those designations. Yes, it's like two ways of seeing, and we have to balance both of those ways. Just like when we're dealing with, as Madhyamadikaris, we're dealing with 4 types of entities: the Supreme Lord, devotees, the innocent, and the envious. Yes, we have those distinctions. At the same time, we see things on the spiritual platform too. Someone's envious, but we understand they're also part and parcel of Krishna. It's not that we simply see like that. They're envious, or they're acting enviously. Let's say acting enviously. Not they're envious. That would be really bad in empathic communication. So they're acting enviously, but they're part and parcel of Krishna, but I'm not Krishna conscious enough to bring them to their real understanding, because I'm only a Madhyamadikari. Hopefully I'm a Madhyamadikari. I mean, that's a pretty elevated position to be Madhyamadikari. So as far as Varnashram is concerned, let's bring it back to Varnashram, we see everyone as a Vaishnava. It's not that we need to make the sort of discrimination. Discrimination is according to their qualities, work, family situation, everything like that. But we're friendly with all the other Vaishnavas. I definitely don't think you need to put devotees. Let's say if someone's a Vaishya, let's say, if I have some friends, disciples, whatever, who are Vaishyas, that, I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to be friendly with you, I don't want to, just because you're a Vaishya. And God forbid if you're a Shudra, if you even step on my shadow, I'll probably cut your head off. There's This is the caste consciousness. It's not Varnashram. I mean, look at Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how he dealt with his various devotees. I mean, Ramananda Roy was, ostensibly a Shudra, right? I mean, according to strict, caste distinction. And also the work he did, he was working for a salary originally before he got his pension from King Prataparudra. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when discussing Krishna Katha, he was the most intimate. He and, of course, Damodar Goswami was Brahmin by caste. There was no distinction. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spent the final years of his pastimes associating intimately with Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar Goswami, Sika Mahiti's sister, like this. And he didn't distinguish the caste distinction or the Varna distinction at that particular point, or even the ashram distinction, isn't it? He just didn't, and Ramananda Roy was householder too. So it's just, that really didn't come into play insofar as Vaishnava relationships are concerned. It's not that we see Vaishnavas, because if one sees a Vaishnava according to their body, or sees the deity according to the substance the deity is made of, that's considered, he's a resident of hell. So we have to be very careful in applying Varnashram principles to the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, because we can actually commit offenses against Vaishnavas. It's not that a Kshatriya is better than a Shudra, or Kshatriya, or Vaishya is worse than a Kshatriya, or whatever. We concentrate on Vaishnava qualities. What are the Vaishnava qualities? We find the whole list of Vaishnava qualities. And especially dedication to Krishna and a taste for hearing and chanting the holy names, or hearing and chanting the pastimes of Krishna. If I saw someone who was ostensibly a Shudra and he had a taste for hearing and chanting the holy names, I would love to have his association. Just like my godbrother Jayananda, whose disappearance day we actually just commemorated, isn't it, on the Shinga Chaturdasi, that he was fixing cars all the time and taking the garbage out, right? And the guests who came to the temple, who he preached to, were so amazed that they were thinking, if your garbage collectors are like this, oh my God, what kind of a movement do you have? It must be an amazing movement if garbage collectors are so spiritually advanced. So the Jayananda was the only one who Prabhupada wrote an obituary for. And Prabhupada definitely said he went back to Godhead. And look, what were his activities? As far as giving a class, he didn't know any Sanskrit verses. If you ever listen to any of his classes, there's some recordings. He was simply stressing, you got to have a taste for the holy name, everything's in the holy name. And it was purity. And even there's that whole story where Prabhupada tried to teach him how to chant the Gayatri mantra, and Prabhupada just gave up. He said, just think of me. So what happened is, one time Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Jayananda, they're supposed to say the Gayatri, and Jayananda said it very, very quickly. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, how do you get it done so quickly? And he said, I was just thinking of Prabhupada, basically. So, oh my God. Oh my God. And he's a pure devotee. And we should just hanker for that pure devotees association. Kiva Vipra, Kiva Dasi, Shudra Kena, Ye Krishna Tattva Veta, Say Guru Hoy. We're not the body, Prabhu. Yes, the body has certain psychological or psychophysical tendencies which we use in Krishna's service. Yeah, no brainer. But we're not the body. I often make the joke, hopefully no one gets upset with this, that in the Krishna consciousness movement, this is a joke, Krishna consciousness movement, the men are not the bodies, but the women are their bodies. You understand the sarcasm there?
Yeah.
That's a sarcasm, where people who tend to discriminate devotionally against people of a different gender and think that they can't be preachers or can't even be gurus is a political statement. Sorry about that. So I revealed my political political position. So anyways, so we just don't discriminate. I mean, look at the disciplic successions that we have. Not only the Brahma Sampradaya, because Lord Brahma is a Brahmin, we have one disciplic succession headed up by a lady, right? Lakshmi. We have another disciplic succession headed up by 4 little kids. 5-year-old boys. What's going on here? And another disciplic succession headed up by someone who doesn't wear clothes. And he's an Avaduta, Lord Shiva. So don't we learn something from that? That don't see a Vaishnava according to the body or the deity according to the material, stone or wood or whatever, like that. So we have to have a balanced approach to Varnashram. Certainly Prabhupada wanted Varnashram. Prabhupada talked about Varnashram college, which means training people up according to their Varna, sure. I mean, if I was a kid, I would love to go to a college where I could get philosophical training. I mean, when I joined the movement, the basic training in Prabhupada's books was not regulated, not regular. I mean, there was no curriculum or anything like that. It was basically you go out to Sankirtan, you read the books. So I would have loved to join the movement where there was actual curriculum, a university, just like I was talking to Pranava yesterday about a Vaishnava university. It would have been great. And there should be training for people who are Kshatriyas in management. And I think that that's extremely important, to have management training for those who are Kshatriyas. And those who are managing, there should be this is the final point I want to make. There should be a clear distinction between those who are managing and those who are mentoring. Because when you actually mix the two roles, it causes confusion. Like in my position, I have mixed roles, which is very confusing. In other words, wearing at least 2 different types of hats. So you need to have varnashram in a religious society. Someone should be mentoring, and mentoring means just caring for others, spiritual lives and material lives, whatever, and who has no other interest other than the persons that they're caring for. And then you need someone to manage it, practical management. Because management is very practical, and you need politics. In mentoring, you don't want politics. Why would you want politics in mentoring? You're counseling someone, you're concerned for them, you're compassionate with them, you're empathic with them. But in management, yeah, there should be empathy too. I'm not saying that you just throw out empathy. We're just trying to manipulate the hell out of you to get as much service, and then throw you out like one of the bees out of a beehive when you get too old to function anymore. So, but management means, just really have to be trained in management. Management is not so easy. You just sit down and say, all right, I'm ready to be a GBC. It's taken me like 30 years of being a GBC to figure out what I'm supposed to do. So, but there should be training, Varnashram College. It's very important. So I'm not denying what Prabhupada said, but trying to explain it in a more balanced way. So anyway, oh my God. So any questions or comments or problems or arguments? Yes, Brahmavarta Guru.
You talked about sleeping and eating and even recreation.
Yeah.
In 1975, Srila Prabhupada, on a morning walk, he was quite strong that we should give up sleep altogether. I was a little shocked when I heard it, listening to Srila Prabhupada's audio record. he said the goal is for the devotees is to give up sleep altogether, no more sleeping. How's this going?
Yeah, and I think we also have to balance that with other things Prabhupada said. He said intelligence is a function of sleep another time. So yes, we should minimize sleep, obviously, but if we go beyond what is our bare minimum, we're going to find ourselves unable to speak, or, I mean, like in the early days of the movement, it's something I'm sure everybody's heard, that we used to, not me, but so many devotees used to crash cars because they were sleeping. And Prabhupada actually said if someone's going to drive a car, they should, at least for hours a day, they should sleep 8 hours. So Prabhupada was very practical in that. Yes, we should reduce it, not too much. Not, mityahara vihara, as Krishna says in the Gita, mityahara vihara should be balanced. Not eating too much, not eating too little, not sleeping too much, not sleeping too little. Prabhupada said if you can work like an elephant, you can eat like an elephant. So I just see Prabhupada as being practical. I mean, Prabhupada took so much time with his own massage every day, and Prabhupada, of course, in the evening he rested very little, but he also took a nap in the middle of the day. Because Prabhupada, I mean, it's just like if you're driving a car, you don't want to stand around and just pump petrol into your car all day long. But you, being an explosion. Or you don't want to just stand there at the gas, at the petrol dispenser all day long. You pump the necessary amount into the car, and then you go on. It's not that. If you take Prabhupada's instructions, contextually, then you'll see that that's what Prabhupada meant. That otherwise we'd be walking around like a bunch of zombies.
Could one say no sleep for enjoyment?
Well, yeah, no sleep just for the purpose of enjoyment, but it's not that you should feel guilty about it. I mean, it's just. I mean, when I go to sleep at night, I'm tired, hopefully, unless I'm jet lagged. Then I can't sleep, and then it's miserable. So, I mean, there's certain enjoyment that comes anyway, just from sleeping or from eating. But we don't eat just for enjoyment. We eat to serve Krishna. We sleep to get the energy to serve Krishna. Yeah, just like when I took rest last night, I was thinking, I'm going to have to give class, and I've been not coherent tomorrow morning. It's going to be a disaster. And all of a sudden, huh? That's what it would be like. I mean, I've experienced when I've been super tired that, just the thoughts just don't come into the mind anymore. I mean, haven't we all experienced that? It's just like, what am I supposed to say? But when I'm relatively rested up, then they come very quickly into the mind. Yeah. And also other things like blood pressure. I know from my doctor, Dr. Radha, who I think you all know, most of you know, he told me if you don't get enough sleep, your blood pressure goes up, and I've actually experienced that too. Yeah. Jayananda.
Yes. Just want to comment about the harmful effects of sleep deprivation. Like, there's a lot of research coming up, like how culturally the whole human society is entering a phase where, practically speaking, everyone is sleeping too little. So, in that context, emphasizing a particular out of context instruction like that can be really detrimental.
Yeah.
People are anyway already sleeping too little, and then you hear that's actually spiritually ideal to cut it down even more.
But everyone has a different amount of sleep. And you can figure that out by reducing to the point where you become less functional. Where the whole point is to maximize the efficiency. So there's a maximization point. If it's too little sleep, it minimizes. Too much sleep, it minimizes. So there's a balance. It's like a blend of chemicals when you're trying to do some chemical reaction. It's a balance. So You have to experiment, and you have to experiment with. It's an experiment, and for some people, I've seen people, basically devotees or people come from India, their bodies need less sleep. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I know, of course, I work with a lot of people from India or Indian body, and they need extremely little sleep. And they're still functional and bright as sunshine when they wake up in the morning. Whereas, the Western body, I think it's generally a little bit different than an Indian body. I mean, I couldn't do what Prabhupada did. I mean, it's not. I couldn't be as spiritual as Prabhupada, but it's just you just can't do it. I can't do it what a lot of my disciples do, as far as the sleeping is concerned, because they have different types of bodies. So in the West we have. I don't want to say they're Malecha bodies, but somehow or other the bodies are not as much in the mode of goodness. Yeah, Brahmarta.
The former governor of California, he had the solution. He said, sleep faster.
Sleep.
I'm still trying to figure out how to do that.
Sleep faster. I would like to figure out how to do that. Yeah.
I have an actual question, Maharaj. You said that you made a statement, our movement expands by the loving exchange of the Vaishnavas.
Yeah.
And I think you gave a source, but I didn't capture it.
The Upadeshamrita, Prabhupada's purport.
And the purport of the...
Yeah, yeah.
Of the Nectar of Instruction.
Nectar of Instruction, yeah.
Okay, that's good. Are we trying to follow that?
We is an interesting word. I'm making some endeavor. That's why I published my book, which I'm not advertising in class, although they made me advertise it in Amixgard. So, with my empathic communication and then encouraging others to take up empathic communication, yeah, because people will remain in a society where there's loving exchanges. They'll engage in more austerities to accomplish the purpose or mission of a society where there's love. Just like in a family, if you have a family and everybody loves each other, then the children are willing to take care of the parents for the parents' lives, even though the parents are disabled. Willing to undergo so many austerities. Or the parents, it's like I was talking to one father who's been working many years, putting his children through school and everything like that. And so many austerities, like going to work or whatever, that I couldn't even imagine working as hard as the grahastas in our society. Because, working in that way. I couldn't imagine going to a factory every day and working from 8 to 5 or whatever, or night duty. But when there's love, then one's willing to make sacrifices. And so, if we love Prabhupada and we love each other, then people will be attracted to our movement. I often heard it said by people that you have the best philosophy in the world, but, relationships are really sorely lacking in depth. So, and there's reasons for that. It has nothing to do with Krishna consciousness itself. It has to do with certain dynamics that occur in religious organizations. That's it. It's a completely different topic that I mentioned briefly yesterday in class. That, anyway, somehow or other we have problematic relationships, and we're labeling each other. Just like this whole label, this person's a feminist. I've been labeled a feminist before, even though I never were, sorry, in this lifetime. Or this person's a chauvinist, or this person's a chauvinistic pig, or this. You hear all the materialist. So we tend to label each other because religions have a lot of labels, so we can use those labels in labeling each other and becoming disconnected from each other. And so there's a lot of challenges. a lot of challenges. So I don't want to get into that whole area in this class. All right, who? All right, all right.
I have a question about emergency. It
Yeah.
seems that the different people and even different devotees have a different idea what emergency means. There was a mention in the purport that, or at least you mentioned that in the normal situation one should act according
To one's nature,
and
yeah.
when it's emergency you can do anything, and it's
Almost anything.
and it seems that for example, it seems that Prabhupada was kind of engaging devotees who were kind of feeling some kind of emergency. So
Right,
he was
right.
engaging them in service, but it seems that one person can have like emergency consciousness for during their whole life, despite of the circumstances. They can have like
Yeah.
it's all the time emergency.
Yeah, well, one thing is that Prabhupada's brief tenure in the Western world, or after he left India, it was only like 11 years. So it was an emergency for Prabhupada, because he had 11 years to accomplish the mission of his spiritual master and start the movement, the worldwide movement. So therefore he had to do things, I mean, not different than his nature, but he had to do things that were emergency based, like traveling from one country to another continuously, so many times. I forget how many times he went around the world. Does anyone remember?
7, I think.
No, 13.
How many?
13.
13, yeah, about 13 times around the world in 11 years. I mean, for a person of that age, and I can say that because I'm at that age right now. I mean, that is intense. And you never hear Prabhupada talking about jet lag or anything. Prabhupada just pushed through it the whole time. So Prabhupada, because of the situation, it was an emergency. He only had 11 years. If Prabhupada didn't do that in that 10 or 11 years, we wouldn't be here today. And so, because Prabhupada was in that emergency mode, those of us who were with him were in that emergency mode for that period of time. But that emergency, there's no need to continue that emergency mode after Prabhupada left. That's why Prabhupada started talking about Varnashram. Not because he wanted Vaishnavas called by their Varna or distinguished against or discriminated against. Because Prabhupada understood, the emergency mode, he's leaving, it doesn't need to have an emergency mode anymore. So yes, sometimes the emergency can last for longer. But not right now. I'm not going to go into emergency mode because I want to live a little longer. If there's a need, yes. That's a good point. It can last for years. Jayananda, you have a question?
Gurudev, I was wondering about the 4 items mentioned in Bhagavad Gita where one needs to be balanced. One of them is, sleeping.
Eating, sleeping, mating, defending.
No, work and then recreation.
Oh, recreation, yeah.
6.16 and 17.
Oh, yeah, work and recreation.
So, recreation as category is not elaborated in any of the commentaries I read.
Yeah.
So, and then Srila Prabhupada sometimes used to say that just like dancing in kirtan is recreation. But the whole context is these need to be in place so that they can be successful in yoga, so the spiritual practice would be a separate category. So what would count as a recreation?
That depends on the Varna.
Okay.
That really depends on the Varna. For Kshatriya, it would mean like, sword fighting or something like that.
Yeah.
So I what's that?
Ping pong?
Ping pong, yeah. Yeah, I remember one GVC meeting, we went on a retreat and I was playing ping pong with Pragosh. And I'm embarrassed he won. He was much better than me.
That's good.
So, I think it depends, there's different natures, and sometimes, like Prabhupada, he would sometimes joke, and the joke had, nothing directly to do with Krishna consciousness. And that was like recreation for Prabhupada. You hear Prabhupada talking about certain things and you're wondering, what is that connection with Krishna? Prabhupada looked at Shrutakirti's feet one time and he said, "Oh, your mother must be very beautiful." And Shrutakirti said, "How do you know?" And Prabhupada said, "Because your feet are very, nice," or something like that. What does that have to do with Krishna? But there's a need of mental relaxation. Prabhupada said to that devotee Purushottam who was talking about the moon landing when Purushottam burnt himself in the kitchen, and he came up to Prabhupada and he was all blackish from the burn, and the Prabhupada said, "Purushottam has gone to the moon." So you just, Prabhupada was a well-rounded person. If you take one thing out of context, you really won't understand Prabhupada. He was extremely well-rounded. Like I mentioned, massages, so many hours a day of massages and joking. Prabhupada's very humorous. There's so many instances. Like there was one airlines in the United States called Pacific Standard Airlines, where the stewardesses had mini skirts. And Prabhupada said, you should call it Prostitute Standard Airlines. Or Prabhupada had Tripurari go to the managers of the O'Hare Airport and said, you should change it to Oh Hare Krishna Airport. It's just like, it's obviously a joke. Obviously Prabhupada knows they're not going to do that. So, you find Prabhupada, engaged in recreation. I mean, he walked every day. He was told to do that by a Jewish doctor in New York. So he had a need for exercise. Because the Jewish doctor in New York said, Swamiji, you chant too much. Prabhupada didn't stop chanting, of course, but you need to exercise. And Prabhupada took it after that point, Prabhupada took it as practically a religious activity every day to exercise. Even when he was in a very cold climate, he would just exercise in the hall of the hotel, walking back and forth. So, I think Prabhupada was well-rounded person. He's not just like one dimension. So, yes.
Yeah, I noticed the question came up. Prabhupada said that the goal is to not sleep at all. Like we have goals that we cannot achieve them by pretending that we have already achieved them. Because a pure devotee who has no connection with the body, they may not need. Like you said, Prabhupada took naps, but we can also understand that he was up all night translating. He must have slept very, very little.
Yeah.
So if you imitate that before you are there, it's not going to help you. But maybe it's some understanding how far you have come in that realization or not. Like sometimes we hear things and then I see discussions where people take it as an instruction. Like Prabhupada said, got the question, will your disciples be gurus? And he said yes. Also the ladies, and he said yes, but not very many. And then they are scratching their head, how can we make sure it's not very many? Whereas I think Prabhupada just meant, practically speaking, it won't be very many women who take it service.
It's descriptive rather than prescriptive. That's it. That's the distinction. Another thing I was thinking about this no sleep thing was that Prabhupada didn't sleep. He rested. He was always Krishna conscious. Yeah. So you can actually take it in that way too, that you should be thinking of Krishna all night long while the body is resting. You should rest and not sleep. So that's a way to take that instruction. So that's just thinking about that. Yeah.
I have another question about diplomacy, because it seems to me political diplomacy is applied to get what you want. But when you're speaking about the Western ISKCON and the India ISKCON, I think it must be applied to find out what both parts need and how to apply it.
That's
it's not that you want to take one part to conquer the other, but to find out how to be Krishna conscious even if you come from different
That's true. That's true. I mean, it's a win-win type of, but it's still diplomacy, type of diplomacy. I mean, in devotees in India having to interact with the government there, they definitely have to be extremely diplomatic.
Well, I mean, defending yourself to the outside, that
Yeah.
of course, that would apply.
But with devotees, no, we shouldn't be lying, and we shouldn't be underhanded or lying or manipulative.
Because Krishna even says that to his father in the Govardhan Leela. An elevated person is honest with everyone, but
Yeah.
even an ordinary person should be honest with their own family.
Yeah. No, yeah, actually, we should be honest between the devotees. That's right. Not manipulative. I didn't want to give that impression. So, any other questions? Controversial. Yes, Brahma.
Have you ever been personally accused of something that you didn't do? And the follow-up question would be, how does one deal with it?
Okay.
How
Yes,
do you
the answer is yes. I've been accused, and the accused, and well, people were convinced that I did something when I didn't do it. You know, several times. Actually, it's not that unusual for that to happen, and it's painful when the accusation is coming from someone you trust or love. That's the hard thing. I mean, if it was just like the police stopped me for a speeding ticket, I did do it. I mean, it's painful, but it's not painful in the heart, painful in the brain. So I think that, like it's described in the Bhagavatam, it's more painful to hear the harsh words of people, I'm just paraphrasing, you love, than to get a knife in your heart. So to be accused of something and people thinking you actually did something that you didn't do is, what can I say? So how do you deal with it? What I do is I take a long japa walk, and sometimes the walk lasts for several days. I mean, I rest in between. I mean, in other words, I take prasadam and do everything normal, but during the day after the morning program, it's just like I'm walking the whole day and chanting japa and just connecting Krishna. Why is it? Trying to understand why Krishna has put me in that situation. And then also trying to understand, well, just getting back to what I'm teaching about empathic communication, trying to understand my own feelings and needs. And also trying to understand how I was actually demanding, my demanding this person to act in a certain way and expecting him to act in a certain way, and he didn't act in that way, is causing my pain. It's another subject matter that I go into in detail, which is like expectations of people. Because when people don't fulfill our expectations, especially if they attack us, then it actually, you know, we're disappointed, we're angry. I mean, all these different emotions come to the mind. And, you know, there's certainly it comes to my mind, you know, disappointment, anger, bitterness, sadness, all these things come to mind. So then I try to understand myself, how I was demanding or expecting someone to act in a certain way, and that was an unrealistic demand or expectation. And when I've dealt with it internally, then I start to try to understand why the person did according to his own needs. But then it sometimes takes days, and it's painful. I mean, sometimes it's even, you know, I'm a sannyasi, but, you know, there's even like tears come sometimes. Sannyasis are allowed to cry.
What if it happens amongst your peers?
Yeah, that's when
management?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's the hardest thing. You know, that's harder than with disciples, or it's harder than with, you know, with anybody. It's harder than even with family members. You know, when your peers, your friends, your good buddies, people you work with. Like, I mean, for example, for those of us, you know, the Prabhupada disciples, it's like we've gone through the war together. It's like, you know, the Ukrainian soldiers who have been fighting together. There's a certain bonding that happens. And when someone who you've gone through the war, I mean, literally war, you know, 50 years of fighting for Krishna, does something without without understanding the evidence, basically, or turns against you. That is the most painful thing. And then it takes time. There's no quick and easy method for dealing with it.
I have heard a statement that in such a situation, if you just tolerate it, you do nothing, that you, not that you want that, but you're getting the pious results of the attacker.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's refers to between devotees. I think that's, like Dharma the bull getting attacked by Kali, the personality Kali, or something like that. And I'm not so interested in getting anyone's pious results anyway. I don't want pious results. I find if you don't deal with it, internally at least, then it eats you away. It just keeps eating at you and eating at you. And then it hurts your health. You may have some, things can happen. High blood pressure, disease. And, because anger, a lot of diseases like cancer can maybe not be caused, but stimulated or by anger. Usually there's a connection between anger and cancer. So I try to figure out how to not get rid, not how to simply tolerate the anger, but to diffuse it. Diffuse it by the processes that I just mentioned. Otherwise, you get really sick. I mean, your throat, everything just like tightens up. There's this physiological reaction to these things. It's just like you can't breathe deeply anymore. And it can't be helpful to the bodily health. So I wouldn't just tolerate. Does that answer the question?
Would you make a statement whether?
Not necessarily. I would think strategically. After I cool down, then I start to think. If I don't cool down, I will make a statement that's not strategic. And I've had that happen before. I've learned from that experience. You just like write a letter in the heat of the moment. And then what happens, it just exacerbates, makes the situation worse. So usually, that's the problem with email. You just write a letter and you send it and then you feel real good about yourself. And then next morning you're thinking, oh my God, can I retract it? Nice thing about WhatsApp is you can retract things before someone else sees it. The WhatsApp? I use WhatsApp. You can retract it. If I call someone a demon, I didn't mean that. I just... That's why anyone who uses WhatsApp sees from time to time, this statement has been erased or something like that. Deleted message. Yes, yeah, question.
I don't think I totally grasp the system, as you use the word, because it's a delicate situation. Firstly, I think it is understood that it's nobody else's responsibility for your feeling of being content or peaceful. That's your responsibility. But it's also not okay being disrespected or harassed. But I remember Prabhupada, I think it was in a room conversation, I don't remember where, probably 1975, and he said that a devotee's life is always turbulent.
Yes.
But he remains tolerant and indifferent to that.
Yes.
So how do you find that balance of remaining peaceful in yourself, even if others say something, you don't say anything back, you don't attack back, but also keeping that self-respect of not just being harassed, or it's a delicate situation.
It's a delicate balance, and as I said, the first thing I do is I chant a lot. I think, and Krishna reveals to me how to deal with that particular balance. I think the chant, if I didn't have the chanting, I don't think I could deal with it. Then I would run away, fight or flight.
Exactly.
The fight, which is the natural primitive response to any sort of stimuli like that. You just, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. You know, for me that would be go to Govardhan's, goodbye cruel world. But so yeah, so I found that I really have to get deeply into the chanting. And I find it's impossible for me to do it if I'm just sitting in one place. I have to take a walk at the same time. There has to be some physical, just this me.
The motion.
There has to be some motion to deal with the emotion.
Makes sense.
So that's my strategy. Other people may have a different strategy, but I find the holy name, if every circumstance, whatever happens if we take shelter of the holy name will give us the intelligence in how to deal with it. Yes? Oh, question.
Yeah, I appreciated your advice on something. I'm sorry. I very much appreciate your advice. If one is disappointed in relationships.
It's really hard for me to hear.
Um,
What did she say?
She appreciates your advice that if she is in difficulty with chanting.
Yeah.
yes, but in my case it was work. Unfortunately, in another way that I lost my taste for chanting when my relationships when I came to
Good.
In some occasions it worked well, and in other occasions she lost the taste of chanting.
Yeah. Sometimes when one's really upset or the emotions are really strong, it's hard to have a taste for chanting. And so that's when the intelligence comes into to bear, that we know that the chanting will help, even though I don't feel like chanting now. Sometimes when something happens, you feel like getting angry and beating someone up. Or running away, fight or flight response. So by intelligence, this is what we call vacho vegam, manasakrota vegam, jiva vegam, udara vegam, controlling the mind. In other words, I'm being understanding I am angry, not denying the fact that you're angry. Of course, I'm teaching empathic communication. My teacher's there. So anyway, who'll grade me on it. So anyway, understanding I am angry. And being in touch with your anger, but not necessarily expressing it by, running away or beating someone up. I am angry. I have certain, if you read my book, which some people, devotees have copies here, the anger is caused by certain needs that I have that are not being met. And usually in the case of accusations that are not true against me, it'll be a need for understanding. Usually in that case, I have a need for understanding, compassion, and fairness. So here's what in addition to chanting, what I really do. I get in touch with the basic needs that are the cause, and I take responsibility for my emotions. I am angry. That person didn't make me angry. I am angry because certain needs are not being fulfilled. A need for fairness, equality, honesty, all these other needs. Is that all right, teacher? You're the teacher, I'm asking you. Okay. I got it graded today. So, but chanting, I need to chant too to be able to be cool-headed enough to process that, like that. Yeah.
Without getting so much into politics, what is your view about the world situation?
What situation?
Whatever is going on right now.
War.
I'm not going to get into that.
All right, thank you.
Not going to get, because what we know is what we read in the media, pro, con, whatever, and I am not really qualified to take positions on these things. I'm not omniscient, unfortunately, or fortunately, as it is. And the only thing is I don't like to see people hurt. it causes me pain. I feel pain because I have a need for people to be treated fairly. So when anyone on any side of any fight is hurt or disabled or put in pain, I don't like it. That's my position. I think that devotees or people in the world should be kind to each other and support each other in their needs, especially their spiritual needs. Yeah?
I just wonder if the GBC has the power to enforce some kind of diet in the temples, because we are reading your book now, and I agree with you. And I think that I've been waiting for some kind of change in the diets in the temples, because I know since the 80s it's been going on, and I mentioned to somebody, and they just didn't care.
Well, you just have to work that out. I mean, it's a complicated thing because many people are attached to a certain. It's not simply a management decision. It's because many people are attached to a certain type of food, certain type of eating, and I'm not going to get into it. Anytime I've tried to change someone's diet, I've ended up as their enemy. So I would say just like, as long as you don't eat animals, I'm happy. And, if you ask me what's a healthier diet, I'll tell you, but I'm not going to try to preach to you about it. I've learned the hard way not to get into people's diet or weight or anything like that. It's dangerous.
Yeah. And super annoying.
And super annoying. Yeah.
Come and tell you what you're supposed to eat and what your health is.
Yeah.
It's my health.
Yeah, it's very annoying. You don't make friends. So I just try to set an example of doing what I want to do, eating what I want, and I'm not forced to eat anything else. I mean, even when I go to a GBC meeting, this is a funny story. One year we had a GBC meeting in Eugene, and they had the types of prasadam were things that I just don't eat for a variety of reasons. So I had in my room a rice cooker. You know what a rice cooker is. And I was making different, vegetables. Actually, the devotees prepared dehydrated food for me, so dehydrated vegetables. So I never had to buy anything either. So I was just cooking my meals. And then the brahmacharis kept coming to my room and telling me, it's time for prasadam. And they said, don't you eat? And I said, no, I live by breathing the air. I was playing, making a joke. So after 3 or 4 or 5 days, the brahmacharis never saw me eat anything. And they, whenever I would walk anywhere, they'd point out, point their finger at me. He lives by just breathing. He's a breatharian. So I developed a strategy. I have a strategy for anywhere I go where they don't prepare what I need to eat, how I can eat what I want to eat. It's not a difficulty. I mean, for 2 years I just ate raw food too. So if you just give me a carrot, I'm happy. So, all right. I think we have to end that. Yes, Brahma Martin.
Last one, Marla. You just mentioned enforcing. I hope you don't mind that I asked this question, but we have been presented with a video in which you say that one of your disciples should run after devotees on the forum and force
jab them.
the jab into them. How I always liked you so much, but when I saw that video, I wasn't looking disturbed, to say the least.
Well, if you actually saw the whole context, it was a joke. That disciple, she was working in a vaccination clinic in Australia, and if you think of it, she's like a middle-aged. She won't like that description, middle-aged. But anyway, she's.
You look pretty young.
Yeah. Anyway, she's young. Hopefully, she's not watching. I'll be in big trouble. So anyway, so you thought a lady who doesn't look like this, like Rambo or something like that, running into a community and just jabbing everyone. It's just the thought of it was so humorous to me. And, you know, maybe it was inappropriate, and probably was inappropriate because I got attacked all over the world for it. But it wasn't a serious comment. You know, if people know me, they know that I often joke about things. And I had to apologize to a number of people who thought that I was serious.
Did she see it as a joke?
That she saw it as a joke, but she also got attacked for it. See, obviously, you can't do that. You can't just start grabbing people and sticking needles in their arms.
It sounded a little harsh.
Yeah, it was. And it was a mistake, you know, and I do make mistakes. I am subject to the frailties of the conditioned soul, making mistakes and whatever.
So you're not promoting forced inoculation?
No.
Thank you.
No way. I mean, it's up to the individual. I'm promoting that people should be educated and, you know, understand the science, and then make their own decisions. You know, I made my decision, and it's up to the individual. I have many disciples who don't accept vaccinations. And they're very nice devotees, and that's just their choice. I mean, there is a risk. Like in anything you do, especially vaccinations, there's a risk. There's a big risk, and it's up to the individual to balance the risks with the benefit, a benefit-risk analysis. And it's their responsibility. I don't want to be responsible for someone who does something, and then they have some side effects, and then you force me to do it, Guru Dev. So just understand the risk. That's my position for this. Anyway, yeah, my humor sometimes gets away with me. You know, vacho, vegam, humor, vegam. That's my problem. All right, I think we have to end now because it is time for prasadam, and we're supposed to reduce our eating, but I'm not ready for it. Okay. On that happy note, all glories to His divine grace.